Hey, good evening, everybody. Rob Craighead here from the Office of Cutter Forces. New to this platform, and if you give me a radio check, just to give me a sense that you can hear me and we're streaming properly. I'll wait a few minutes or at least a little bit here before we get started. So appreciate it. Hey, first one in. So far, so good. Good to go. Thanks. Loud and clear. Love it. Okay. Looks like the numbers of participants are climbing. I'm at 25. I think I saw Eddie somewhere in the 50 range. So if we can get a little higher than that, I think I feel good about myself at the end of this short presentation. So uh, Eddie's a hard act to follow. Loud and clear. Nice. Drew Sistrunk. That's a familiar name. So after 30 plus years active duty, it's difficult. It seems like every day I see a familiar name, so that never gets old. 32, we're climbing. Alessandro, great, appreciate that. I won't take up a lot of your time. I'll do a quick summary of my background. I sit in a cozy and charming little cubicle at the Office of Cutter Forces, and I manage the individual qualification program, which is comprised of WQS, PQS, and JQR. A little bit about myself. I retired from active duty in 2018. Like I said, with a little over 30 years, and I've sat for the board as a BM1. I don't even remember the year at this point. Rush Sailors. I love the Rush Sailors. And then I've sat on a number of sector and district boards as an OIC, as a CO, and I think it's one of the most rewarding experiences you'll have, and I mean that in terms of failing and passing. If you when you pass this formal interview, you'll discover, at least for that day, as Eddie said, for that one day, you feel invincible. And then, of course, you go back to your unit and your shipmates and the people around you remind you that you're really not that invincible. But that's part of the cool experience. Um, so WQS, uh, it's in my time, it's a fairly new program, but just as a quick takeaway, you'll find this stuff in the Cutter Training and Qualification Manual in Chapter 5. And if you're asking yourself, well, how does this relate to me in terms of the board or what's its purpose? I'd say this is having an awareness of the programs that manage our community. And I think certainly the Cutter Training Qualification Manual is an important guide for you folks that are pursuing your OIC quals afloat. So that's where you find the WQS stuff. And what is WQS? Watch Station Qualification Standards. And this is the sign-off guides, the study guides, qualification material that you use to pursue those qualifications on your ships. So a lot of questions I get is, how do I know if I'm supposed to use this? And by policy, if there's a WQS guide for your particular position on that ship, you're required to use it. And if not, often you can defer to a Coast Guard PQS if there's one available. And if not, there are often occasions where you'll use a Navy PQS. And that's always frustrated me, but it's still quite prevalent in our community. I'm sure you've seen it. A lot of changes are happening to WQS right now. As a person that had a background in the boat forces community and in the afloat community, I was often frustrated by feeling like I was navigating and negotiating two different programs, and that bothered me. And now I have an opportunity to marry the two, and that's really our long-term goal here in Cutter Forces, is to put together qualification guides afloat using the type and any tasking model that most of you, I'm sure, are familiar with. So that's what we're doing, and the first iteration of that change is apparent in the new damage control WQS guide which is on our portal site. And by the way, any of these things that, if they're not clear to you, you don't know where to find them, you're not sure, you can always send me an email on Global, or you can use the WQS Help Desk email, which I monitor daily. And, I probably get 12 to 15 emails a day and sometimes more. It's rewarding because I can still communicate and interact with the Blue Suits, and that never gets old. So if you have questions, look me up on Global, and then we'll get back to some degree of normalcy, and I'm back in the office on a regular basis. You can, of course, pick up the phone and call, and we can catch up, tell sea stories, and talk about real things like getting qualified. So the differences, between WQS and PQS, for example, WQS is a very, to me it's a clear program where it has sign-off, study material, and at the end of that it has a required examination. And the examination is managed by your training officer, your XPO, your OIC, COXO, whoever. And again, those things are outlined in the Cutter Training Qualification Manual. And I also have a quick desk reference guide. It's on the portal site, and if you can't find it again, email me and I'll send it to you. I share that with a lot of the new JOs on the ships, and I think it's quite helpful to them. And the PQS, they're all over the place. They look different. They don't, have exams, and they don't use often in the float community, they don't use the type in the anti-tasking. So again, we're kind of all over the place, and my 5-year plan is to bring it all together and look the same across the board, afloat and ashore. So a lot of questions I get are about WQS and your civilian maritime credentials. And when I came up through the system, I had to, probably like some of you have already done, I had to go to the National Maritime Center like anybody off the street and get my mariner licensing. And now that's going to change here very soon. Our office is working closely with the Military to Mariner office, and we're working on obtaining credentials for WQS guides up to Deck Watch Officer. For example, if you're the XPO or the BM1 on an 87 and you have a DWO letter, you will very likely soon see a pathway to get your civilian credentials on the civilian side up to 200 gross tons without having to go to the National Maritime Center and taking a test. The material that we've built as a way to close some gaps is with the National Maritime Center now, and I know ForceCom's going to release that. Who knows? Maybe within the next 2 or 3 months. So those are some exciting things that are on the near-term horizon. So again, if you have questions on any or credentialing material, email me, call me, IM me, and I'll be happy to give you a hand. What else? Some of the updates we're making right now to the afloat qualification guides. We're in the middle of updating helm and lookout, and this is where we're starting to play with the new model of using the type and the anti-task, so that whether you're on a 65, you're on a FRC or a Wimsel, we want to have the same guide, and then based on your platform, you'll have the type stuff and the anti stuff. And again, I think it'll make much better sense and will be easier to manage from a program standpoint, and maybe relieve some of the burden on you folks as you transfer between platforms. And then after that, we're going to move into, probably this summer, we're going to revise Quartermaster Watch and Deck Watch Officer. The ultimate goal is to have a bridge operations WQS guide from helm all the way up to navigator, and I think we're long overdue. And these aren't going to be computer-based the way they have been for the past 5 to 8 years. And we recognize that a lot of our folks just simply don't have the access to the computers on the ships, and so we're building these into a PDF format. And there's nothing FUYU in this, and you can put these on your computers, your personal devices, wherever on the ship's network, and and use these guides. So we should have these out again later in the year. So anyway, that's WQS in a nutshell. I'm not going to get into what PQS is. I think you all are probably intimately familiar with the various products out there. So JQRs, I get some questions on JQRs. Here's an example. If you have sign-off guides on your ship or your unit that you have deemed to be inadequate, or they just don't address all of the particulars of your mission areas, your whatever your situation, you can develop a JQR. And I would just ask, if you have a JQR for your particular platform, email it to me and I'll put it on our portal site, because somebody on a similar platform may have the same need and may not be familiar with how to build a JQR or do not want to go through the process. So share them with me. I'll give you feedback on them, and then we'll put them on the portal. So that's, in a nutshell, what a JQR is. So, oh, any chance SailNav can stop being a requirement for QMO? So on the SailNav, so I'm assuming your point of your question here is on the major cutters, 210 and above, and the 225s and D14. The short answer is no, I don't think so. I think that's a skill set that the organization feels is still relevant and important, so I don't see that going away. I would say take a look at the LMS material that's online, and maybe that helps you. But no, I don't. I just, some things that just aren't going to go away, and SailNav is one of them. And I'm a proponent of having an awareness and familiarity with that particular skill. So, short answer is no. So, how about any other questions on qualifications, WQS, or heck, officer in charge review boards, or any of that? I'm happy to take them. I think I also share some of the frustrations with TMT. We're obviously a stakeholder in that process, so we have a person in our office who's on that IPT, and whenever I can insert an opportunity to promote what we need for the afloat community, we do. But I'm kind of in the waiting game like most of you, so I think that's it. Make sure I've gotten with my notes here real quick. Yeah, so that's it. I think the biggest thing I want you to, I guess, understand is that we're in a process of revising all of the afloat WQS content. It's going to look like the boat forces stuff. So for our MK and Boatswain community, if I was still active duty, I would appreciate that. Hopefully you do, and if you have, if you ever want to participate in these groups that help us revise this material, those opportunities are available. We need approved performers and subject matter experts. So again, reach out and say hello. Drew, any WQS applicable to shore units that we should be aware of? No, I don't think so. Nothing. So that's a good question. When I talk about some of the revisions we're making to the WQS to look like type in any, after that, I'd like to have a crosswalk in place that shows, if you've completed these tasks on your 87, your 65, or your Wemsel, then if you're going to be, at this shore unit, they apply to these tasks. And that's a little further down the road, but it makes sense. If you completed it here, why have to do it again? But maybe later we'll do that. So here's a question. If you were a certified navigator, any clue how this will play out with the new navigator quals? Your grandfather. You don't have to do the new quals. That's another good question. Just make sure that stuff is on a page 7 or in CGBI or DA or wherever. I've always recently, because of TMT, I've said go back to getting that page 7 for your certifications and make sure it goes into DA. And you shouldn't have to go into TMT, because they talk to each other, but I'm a proponent of follow up on that stuff and make sure you do. But any insight on crane or weightlifting appliances, futuristic standard across the fleet, or will it remain a district? That's a good question. I don't know. Here's my experience with that. A brief conversation I had in the office with John Singletary about, I think he referred to it as yellow gear. So the crane or the weightlifting appliances, maybe this is related. One of the projects we have, not this summer, but the following year we're going to develop, a, uh, a deck WQS guide. And that's going to be everything from deck seaman, the folks handling the lines for your sea painter, all the way up to crane handling and some ATOM work. So I want to have one comprehensive WQS guide for deck and a study guide that goes all over that. So that's the goal, and that's going to be a beefy project. But again, as a former bosunmate, I felt like we had way too many references, and our material was spread out. So this is my attempt to sort of bring it all in there. River decks, even PQS, river guys are using. Yes, that's what I was just referring to. We're going to put together a deck seamanship or WQS guide and a study guide that, again, will have type and any tasking. So at the end of the day, if my goal in this job, if I was to be here for 5 years only, I would say I would want only 4 guides. And those 4 guides are going to be damage control, bridge operations, which is all your cutter bridge work, deck seamanship, and engineering. And that's it. And those 4 guides, 4 Bibles for get qualified. So if if I could leave with anything today, that's where our program is heading. And I'm a one-person program, by the way. So I rely on contractors to help support that stuff. Let's see, short side equipment. Yeah, I mean, it's still a great question. I don't know. I'm gonna take that note and see where that'll fit into our big deck seamanship overhaul. But that's a good question. Let's see. I think that's it. If you have questions, email me at Global and send feedback. If you've got complaints and you want to air out your grievances on a particular product in WQS or PQS, I'm not married to this stuff. It's not personal. It's business. So feel free to air it out. Unvarnished truth is how we do it. So please don't hesitate to send that in. So with that said, I won't take up any more of your time. Any change to the question bank for WQS positions? Let's see. Yes, as we are revising the example, I'll give you the damage control one we just released. It has an extensive new library of questions. Now, and again, I rely on contractor support, subject matter experts, and approved performers who volunteer. Not every question is going to be related to your particular platform. It's just not possible. So I give you the opportunity to scroll through these questions, and you pull out the areas that you want to emphasize or focus on when you give your member a test. So again, send me your questions and your input, and I'm happy to get back to you. So thanks everybody. Happy 2021, and good luck to those of you that are going to sit before the board. I'm speechless because it was one of the most important events in my career. The doors that had opened were incredible. So if you have any reservation and reluctance, push those fears aside and sit before the board. I appreciate that. So one more question. Should I, as a TPO, be using the WQS for chainsaw brush cutter along with the 1992 PQS? You should be using the chainsaw brush cutter WQS. By policy, you're required to use it because it's WQS. But with that said, if there are things in that 1992 PQS that you think are still relevant and you want to extract them and turn them into a JQR, I'd encourage you to do that. But again, in the interest of time, if you want to give me a call, and we can hammer that one out and come up with a better solution. So thanks everyone. Take care.